Thanks. I'm Sofia Salas from Chile. And my question goes to the Sri Lanka Twin Registry. First, does include kids or they are old adults? And if you say yes, which are the particular concerns regarding authorization for children and follow-up when they grow up? And second, you say that it was very important to build trust and you engage the community in games, dances, but isn't it misleading doing those type of things because research seems far away of those activities?
Yes, to answer your first question, initially it was an adult registry. It was only in 2018 that we started the process of adding an infant, child, and adolescent registry. Yes, there's a lot of ethical issues that come up in dealing with children, primarily the issue of consent and assent. So we are dealing with that right now, but what we plan to do is to engage in a process of stepped consent, where first the parents will give consent, and as the children reach the age of adulthood and consent, they will be asked to reconsent for the research, just to address that. The second question about engaging through cultural activities, it was more more for the purpose of building a community of research and to engage and involve these people in a community setting and to give them a sense of togetherness and to be as a part of a big project. There was no issue of you engage them through cultural activities and then kind of mislead them that we are using them for research. All the activities were passed through an internal and external ethics expert committee approvals. So the use of music, song, and dance really was to build a sense of purpose and a sense of community amongst the twin participants together, which also allowed them to engage a bit more with the researchers, ask questions if they had to. But the process of getting informed and understood consent was never compromised, if that helps.
That lady there?
Maria Diunger from the Philippines. I just wanted to question Mandela. What is the total anonymized consent? I don't quite get. How can you have a consent that is anonymized?
So when I speak of that, I clearly meant you have to tell them everything. Like, for example, whenever the person wants to leave the study, they can, and it should not be like, those involved in the study, at any point in time, once you stay in the study, you're going to pay this. You're going to be paid this amount, or once you leave the study, you're going to pay this amount or something like that. So it should be clear as to what are the benefits if they get involved into the process, and as to when they want to leave, they can leave at any time.
Anybody else? Make it clear. That gentleman there.
Yeah. Question goes to Mandela. You mentioned that people in Liberia only trust to give blood in clinical setting.
Sorry?
How is that? You say that people only trust giving blood in a clinic. How is that impacting on disease outbreak surveillance?
I didn't get the question properly.
Can you clarify the question?
You mentioned that people only trust to give blood, to allow blood draw in a clinic where someone is wearing a white coat and but there are cases where you have to do, especially in disease outbreak investigations, where you have to reach out in the community to do active surveillance. How do you think that fear of drawing blood outside the clinic is impacting on active disease surveillance?
So, sorry. So only in clinical areas in Liberia, we believe that blood samples should be collected. And that's the reason why once you get into the community and ask people to get involved into blood collection and stuff like that, they're going to be looking at you like, I mean, it's for some other illicit purpose. And I do agree with you because it's going to actually have some other negative impact on disease surveillance and things like that. That's why I recommended that there should be more community education on that to help reduce.
2 more questions. The gentleman there.
Hello, I'm Calvin again from Singapore. Thank you very much for the presentation. So, in relation to the Sri Lankan situation, I'm wondering if I was rather intrigued by your analogy to the stock market, and also a bit concerned, you see, because I wonder whether it's not quite a new issue, whether when we talk about foreign collaborations, for instance, or foreign investment, you have a very targeted development in a particular area that doesn't quite help a more balanced form of development across the system, and that ultimately will lead to greater inequity. I do wonder that if that could be a concern. That would be one, and for Liberia, I wanted to follow up on the totally anonymized consent point. So I do wonder whether you see, in terms of your collaborations, the possibility of deep inclusion of affected communities over a sustained period of time. It doesn't sound to me that, at least in terms of the arrangement, it's supportive of these sort of long-term arrangements.
Let's take the 2 questions one by one. Let's Buddhika answer first.
Please, can you clarify the question? Was it about why I used stock exchanges as an analogy, and whether it is a very targeted small area versus...
In a sense, yeah, because if I understood your presentation correctly, and I apologize if I misunderstood it, so in terms of the development of particular skill set, systemic capabilities, for instance, in managing data, collecting and managing, curating data, for instance, we can talk about improving just this particular aspect, but I'm not sure that it actually helps or promote health system in general. And in fact, I think this sort of development may not be constructive in thinking about more holistically about equitable development.
Yeah, I used the stock exchange and the financial sector as an analogy to show that that sector has been able to effectively harness the human resources capacity that exists in LMIC countries. That industry is now over $100 billion in worth. And that has been not because it has been a narrow development, but it has the industry itself has participated in institutional and human capacity building in the areas or in the countries that it has targeted. India, for example, the Indian gentlemen and ladies here can correct me if I'm wrong, but has built extensive capacity in infrastructure and in developing and training the people. So there are a large, wide number of universities and professional institutions which help develop the human resource capacities in that sector. And why I use the stock exchanges specifically was to say that now previously it used to be said that we don't have much research science capacity in LMIC. I think that has been dealt with to a large extent now. But still, it is being said that data analysis capacity, a capacity of to analyze big data, for example, does not exist in LMIC. I'm saying that that is not true because big data companies all have officers in LMIC countries. They have harnessed the capacity that is there. They have invested in building the capacity that is there through improving the health, the human resource capacity in these countries. So it has been done previously, and what requires is a concerted effort and the will to train up and hone that skill set that already exists in LMIC into working in the healthcare research sector as well.
Okay, thanks, Buddhika. Can you respond to his question very briefly, then we go for the discussion?
I'm sure I didn't get you clear, though I heard you talking about the anonymous infant consent, but I didn't get the question clear, so if you
can you be brief and clear, please?
Sorry, yeah, just to be very brief. So I do wonder whether that is supportive of what I see to be a more ideal arrangement, which would be a deeper inclusion of affected communities and over a sustained period of time.
Yes, I do appreciate that. And what you said is true. So that's the reason why the St. Joseph Catholic Hospital is collaborating with East Global, who has expertise on research, and also the LMHRA, that is responsible for some other regulation of clinical trials and other ethical committees in the Republic of Liberia, to come up with a very nice and good anonymous consent.
Okay, let's go for discussion.
Sorry, can I just address something to this lady who asked about
Sure.
the engaging twins through cultural activities? Now, another purpose that engaging twins in this way, engaging twins and their families served, was through the PPI aspect of it, because we could empower those families and use their expertise in their diseases, their concerns, to formulate our research questions. So-
PPI, you have to say everybody may not know PPI, public engagement.
Public, oh, sorry. PPIE, I referred to public and patient engagement.
In involvement.
Yeah, involvement and engagement. I was looking for Susan Roth earlier, who said that we lose control of our research process from the time that somebody else formulates the research question. So by engaging people who are suffering from a particular condition or who have direct exposure to that condition, we were able to even formulate the research questions that we need to engage upon, using these people and engaging these people to talk more about their problems. So in that aspect, it was more useful.
Thank you, Buddhika. Okay, it's open for discussion now. Comments?
So you mentioned that it was a rumor that was spread around the mines that samples from Ebola were taken out of the country. Wasn't that the truth, not a rumor? And how did you actually address that issue?
Okay, so the rumor was they don't know where the purpose of that samples been taken out of the country and the benefit. So they were aware that the samples collected from them, but as to whether sent outside of the country to maybe the Spain or to some other area, it was not clear in the mind. It just been like hearing it in some other corner that, oh, they're sending your blood through the Rabas International Airport and stuff like that.
But samples were taken out. The Ebola samples did not stay in Liberia. Is that correct?
Total explanation has not been given by the Ministry of Health anyway.
So that gentleman there with the red.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Ndebele. My question is directed to both presenters. I'll start with the Sri Lankan case. I wanted to find out more about how you were recruiting the twins into the registry. In what sort of places were you recruiting the twins into your registry? That would be the first one. And then
I'm sorry, please repeat the second part of the
Can't
question.
hear.
How did we recruit? Yes.
how were you recruiting the twins into your registry?
Yeah, so the answer to that is one, through a door-to-door survey, first it was done, and the volunteer register, where we publicized this establishment of a twin register and invited people who have twins in their families, the parents in that case, or twins themselves, adults, to contact us and register voluntarily. So it happened in two ways.
Registration doesn't mean that.
Registration does not mean that they have to necessarily participate in the research. When the research activity happens, they would be given the option of either joining the research project or opting out of it. It was not mandatory to participate in research merely by being on the twin register. That was clarified to them.
Thank you. And then the second one relates to the newspaper article that you flighted there, which was carrying some news that would actually be damaging to biobanking. So that actually shows the power of the media in terms of influencing people's behaviors. So in both countries, I would like to find out to what extent you have now gone into including the media in your efforts, so that now the media becomes the friends of the biobankers, so that now they are the ones who are spreading the correct information about biobanking in Sri Lanka, about the twin registry in Sri Lanka, and also about those specimens in Liberia, where they were being taken to, and to what uses were they being put to, so that now people are more conversant about these issues. So I want to find out about the involvement of the media from that point onwards. Thank you.
Well, I don't need to reiterate that the media has huge power. That power has now become even worse to a certain extent because of social media and its power to spread misinformation. So our only way to deal with it is to engage the media in a positive way. We have taken these steps. One, we use our own magazine where we publish and distribute to schools. And so schools and school teachers have access to the correct information. Two, we use social media extensively. Facebook is very popular still in Sri Lanka rather than Twitter and Instagram. So Facebook is used extensively. And newspapers, TV, radio, and engaging events through research activities of researchers and scientists we have used extensively. That has helped. And the second and the more important thing, I think, is that even with the media and with the public, we have maintained complete transparency. Where it was necessary to engage high-income country research collaborators, we have been very public and open about it. Yes, these people are collaborating with us, but this data or samples are not being sent abroad, and we have been very public and open about the way that we have been dealing with it transparently, which has helped a lot. Yes, the media does have power. Harnessing it for our benefit has been our strength.
Any? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That lady there, after that you. Yeah. Okay, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment on the Sri Lanka case study. I think we can pick some best practices from there in a way that when people are coming up with an idea of establishing or setting up a biobank, we need to, the team that is reviewing this proposal protocol needs to really give extra attention to community engagement. Like, what plans are you putting in place from the beginning? How you're going to engage the community you're going to carry out the biobanking service from, and there should be plans that are reviewed maybe annually and maybe key outputs clearly stated, because in an African context, really, people are very sensitive and they want to feel like they belong. And anytime they feel like they don't, that's why we had all this in newspapers. That's my addition.
So can I clarify? The crux of your question is, how do we engage the community?
Yes, it's just a comment that the community engagement plan should be clear from the beginning. Just stated right there in book, with clear outputs of how you're going to conduct it, and it should be reviewed maybe periodically or annually. I don't know if it's applicable.
Proactively engaging.
Yes, I will definitely agree with you. Can I talk about the ASD project?
Of course.
Yes, right. So after we set up the infant and infant, adolescent, and child register, we are now in the process of writing a project proposal to carry out research on mental health in this group. To elaborate on how we have done it, the process of building up the research proposal itself involved participants from parents of children who have mental health issues, autism specifically. So they contributed in a workshop carried out like this, where
5 days.
over 5 days, they discuss the problems that they have. They discuss the issues where they need further clarification on further, where they thought that further research was necessary, how it could help them. So we incorporated a qualitative and a PPIE, or public and patient involvement and engagement component into our research, so that we could more broadly engage the people who are actually needing the benefit of this research. They won't necessarily benefit financially from it, but we wanted to make sure that we address the questions that the people who suffered from this problem, who had to bear the brunt of the issues that are caused by this problem, were actually addressed.
Okay. Let me take your permission from the chair, being the chair, and clarify it further. We brought in academics, clinicians from Australia, England, Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan clinicians, academic, along with activists and parents who were parents of autistic children. We started initially with the academic interest of wanting to investigate into autism spectrum disorder, but we ended up, based on the directions dictated by the parents, ending up in full neurodevelopment disorders. And to do that, we had 3 experts groups. Ethics expert group included Jonathan Ives, Annette Barn, and many others. PPI group had experts in public patient engagement in Sri Lanka as well as other parts. So that's how we engaged and used that to generate ownership right from the beginning. So the message is, if you are proactive, involve all the stakeholders, I think you can actually avoid some of these exploitations, whether it's by the academia or otherwise. So I think it must clarify, add to what Buddhika said. Okay. There was another lady here, this table.
Thank you for the nice presentation about the Sri Lanka twin registry issue. But what came out of interest to me was the issue about capacity building and the issue to delay the genetic studies or developments altogether up until they have invested quite a lot of capacity within Sri Lanka. What I want to know is, how did you derive to this decision? Do you have some sort of guidelines, or whose law was it altogether to say we want to weigh the risk and the benefits against this decision? That is quite of interest.
Pass that question on to the person who made the decision, really.
As I explained in the morning, we're a great believer of ethics. So we felt that we have an ethical obligation, ethical moral obligation, to satisfy ourselves that we were ready to take to the next step. So we consciously discussed about our incompetencies first, and then we actually did mapping to see the ethical guidelines was not there, we are not ready for biobanking, and there was a legitimate concerns from the public media because these things happen actually. So we had to be proactive and winning over people, not because we were worried about anything. So we actually decided, let's first do the ethics capacity, institutional level as well as support national level. And we always go for external ethics review. Then we develop ethical capacity within as a group. And then we came to the consensus after about 10 years that we are ready, we are equipped, we know how to deal with this internally. And even if you go to any international standards within the country, outside the country, this would be acceptable ethically. Then we decided to set up the biobank. In that whole process, we involved the public, the academics, clinicians, and developed trust in this whole process. And that is how it worked, and we are continuing it, not because we are more concerned about policing of research, but we strongly believe that's the right way to do it. So satisfy ourselves. I mean, that's why we took the decision to put our house first in order rather than doing anything else. So that was the process. It was 20 years work difficult, painstaking, long time, but it's over to you. We have 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Thanks very much. My name's Mike Parker. I'm in the University of Oxford. I've got a question. I'm not quite sure I can articulate it, but it seems somehow important to me. So the question, I think, there's an answer to a question, and the answer is something like, we did some public engagement, we did some community engagement. So I'm kind of trying to imagine what kind of question that's the good answer to. So I can imagine if a funder comes to you and says, you know, how can we feel confident that you did the right thing? You say, well, we did some community engagement as part of that. Or if a member, someone who's in the biobank, someone whose sample is being used in a study, and they say, well, you know, how can I feel confident you're using my data properly? And they were involved in a community engagement activity. You say to them, but don't you remember, we had that community engagement activity and you were part of it and we included you in that decision. So that works there, but I'm just thinking in biobanking, the vast majority of people are not personally have been involved in a community engagement activity. So you're having engagement activities in Sri Lanka or wherever it happens to be with a whole range of community members to build trust. But a lot of the people involved in a biobank are not going to have actually been involved in that public and community engagement activity. So if they come to you with a worry, a complaint, or a concern, what's the question? How does we did some community engagement? How does that answer their worries? What work is that answer doing? Sorry, that's not a very good question, but it seems to me there's something we're assuming at some level implicitly that everyone in the biobank has been involved in some community engagement. That's not going to be the case, though.
Not necessarily. I think that is only a part of it. We do have the governance processes, the standard operating procedures that is required for biobanking initially, all in place. It is everything has been done according to the book, internal ethics committee review, external ethics committee review, all the governance procedures in place. But in addition, it is to build trust that we have engaged in these exercises. So if someone comes to us and asks, but how do I know whether you have been, whether you are trustworthy? Is that kind of the question that you are thinking of?
Someone who is unhappy with something that's happened to their example.
Yes.
How does we do some community engagement answer that worry?
Okay, so let me answer the question. The chairperson of the Sri Lankan Medical Association Ethics Committee is here. She will vouch. One of their conditions was that if anybody has any concern, they should be in a position to complain, raise the issue with the Sri Lankan Medical Association Ethics Committees. We agreed with that. Jonathan, can you help us with the qualitative study you led?
Just to be specific, I'm not complaining about Sri Lanka.
No,
All right.
Sri Lanka is a lovely country and you're doing a great project.
Yeah.
It was a more general question.
It's very difficult to engage the whole community. I totally agree with you. But it's the process which matters, engaging as much as possible. We recently actually held another twin event recently with parents of young children. Actually, we made an appeal, and in parallel to that, we have actually started the process with Sri Lankan Medical Association, public involvement and engagement. We had about 70 people in that workshop, then we independently empowered them to have a PPI group established with wider university representation, public media, which is outside the IRD. So we are trying to set up at different level checks and balances where we could defend what we are doing. Jonathan, do you want to add anything to that, about the study, from the study, what you have found about the... I'm requesting you.
Choice. I guess in the little study we're doing doesn't really give any substantive answers to that. But I guess in answer to your question, Mike, I think I would say, well, saying we've done some community engagement doesn't answer that question. It's part of the jigsaw puzzle. So it's one thing you can do, and it might help to find out what concerns are, what people know about it, and what you can do to improve trust. But I don't think that confers any kind of justification on what you've done in and of itself.
Okay. We'll conclude the session, and it's 20 minutes tea.
Thank you.